All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your attendance. Some of you are residents and some of you have come from far away, San Angelo. Thank you for being here. Let me remind you, this is a formal city council meeting, which is different from our town halls and even our workshops. So the use of cellular phones and electronic devices are prohibited in the city council chamber during meetings, except for that authorized by state law, section 551.023. Rules of decorum are in place as usual. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. All right, so I'm going to call this meeting into order. Please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, please be seated. Okay, we do have a quorum present. Sarah Tandy is out on family business. Proof of notice, City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. The notice of this meeting was posted at 2 p.m. on Friday, the 14th.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we're going to move on to presentations, recognitions, and proclamations. We have two proclamations this evening. Okay, and our city secretary, our city manager, Megan Antrim, is going to accept this proclamation. Whereas administrative professionals play an essential role in coordinating the office operations of business, government, educational institutions, and other organizations. And whereas administrative professionals are vital contributors in today's team-oriented work environment and are key frontline public relation ambassadors for their organization. And whereas the work of administrative professionals today requires advanced knowledge and expertise in communications, computer software, office technology, project management, organization, customer service, and other vital office management responsibilities. And most importantly, have the willingness to learn and accept new challenges. And whereas Administrative Professionals Week is observed annually in workplaces around the world to recognize the important contributions of administrative support staff and is sponsored by the International Association of Administrative Professionals. And whereas the International Association of Administrative Professionals slogan is, "We empower, we develop, we progress." And this is reflecting the integral and central role that administrative professionals play in the modern business. And whereas the city of Alpine is extremely proud of our talented and highly skilled administrative professional staff and officially recognize and appreciate their hard work, support, and continued professional growth. Now, therefore, I, Catherine Eves, Mayor of the City of Alpine, Texas, on behalf of the community, do hereby recognize April 23rd, 2023 to April 29th, 2023 as Administrative Professionals Week. Okay, our city secretary is here to accept this one. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the office of the affairs of the Office of Professional Municipal Clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of our municipal clerk, Jeffrey Calderon, and his clerk, Alexandria Tackett. Now therefore, I, Catherine Eves, Mayor of the City of Alpine, on behalf of the community, do hereby recognize April 30th, May of 2023 to May 6th of 2023 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion to change the order of business so that Mr. Johnson can present his presentation at this time.
I saw my.
I need a second. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, so discussion item number 3, discuss the recommendation from resident Hugh Johnson that the council explore the possibility of an ordinance dealing with businesses storing excessive tires and the environmental impact. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Several weeks ago, I was driving by Oasis after I just bought new tires and paid $5 each tire for disposal fee, disposal charge. I looked out back and I see where they're disposing those tires. It's a mountain of tires, sat the building there, a mountain of tires. Perfect place for mosquitoes, skunks, all kind of varmints living there. And Lord hell, if it ever catches on fire, it'd be impossible to put it out. I called and talked to Megan and found out that the city does not have any ordinance that covers commercial private property dumping. That means, looks to me like anybody can put anything they want on commercial property. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I called TCEQ in El Paso, a fellow named Robert Gilliam. Told him about this. He said that they could and would do something about it. But it looks to me like we ought to take care of our own dirty laundry here, rather than having state bureaucrats come in, tell us how to run our business. I don't know how many of y'all are aware of this out there, but next time you buy there, take a look at that. It's something, and think how many $5 fees were charged, piled up there. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
So he is correct. The city of Alpine does not have an ordinance, and I encourage him to report it to TCQ. TCQ does regulate tire disposal, especially at a commercial level, which is now Bill Williams. It's not Oasis anymore. Bill Williams inherited this problem. Adelina has gone out to Bill Williams Tire and engaged in conversation with the fact that they aren't housing the tires correctly. And that they need to clean up the tires, and then we followed up with a letter as well. TCQ is aware of the situation, not just in Alpine, but the facility in Fort Stockton as well. So they are violating TCQ regulations. With the tires have to be stacked a specific way, and I believe they can have up to 500, but they have to be stacked correctly. If you haven't been out there, they're just throwing the big pile. So Bill Williams Tire is aware of it. They have been asking how they can dispose of them. They've asked us what company we use to dispose of them. But they've also been informed that our 3 tire amnesties coming up, we will not accept them. We won't take from a commercial business. So if the city would like to move forward with an ordinance, Adelina and I have discussed it, and, you know, we've already started looking at other cities and kind of what they do. We can make them a little bit stricter, but we can't relax the rules for TC.
If we can't enforce it, why do we send them, what are we tell them in the letter? If we don't have an ordinance, what do we ask them? Just asking?
We just asked it
Ask them,
politely
okay.
to clean up. It is considered an eyesore, and, you know, we wanted to say, hey, look, you know, this has become a complaint. TCQ will be involved, and
Okay.
they don't want that on their.
No, they don't.
Megan, I think COG has a tire disposal program also.
They used to, I don't know if they have one for commercial. I know that they're part of our SWAC grant is through the COG, which is a solid waste advisory committee grant that gets issued, and we're using it for tire amnesty.
Has this been an issue previously, or is it, like they said, it's something that he inherited and may have not possibly had enough time to deal with it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Oasis kind of did this, you know, they get a big stack and then they would get rid of them and then they get a big stack. Bill Williams came in and I believe they bought Oasis in January. So without having documented what they had in January to what they have now, I don't know how much of it they.
So, but with it, there not being anywhere or how to dispose of them, it might not be an issue of them not wanting to do it, it's just maybe not knowing how to do it since, I mean, where, or I guess where. how to
So
go
that's
about
where
it?
they would really need to work back with TCQ. TCQ is not as forgiving. They put in these requirements and they kind of have to follow them. Even if it's not disposing of them directly, they still need to organize them so that they're not piled up in a huge pile.
They've been informed of this,
Yes.
they say let's just, for now, at least get Adelina to go back and keep up with.
Yes,
what
she is.
they've done.
And there are companies, because we pay, I mean, that's part of our tire amnesty. The COG is covering that expense to pay that company that's coming in to actually haul our tires.
Perhaps we can share that information.
Once we know who it is.
Thank you.
It's a pretty good stack of tires behind the tire shop on the west side too.
So Adelina is our environmental expert. Does she think that we should have an ordinance in place?
She doesn't think it would hurt. Because when she gets phone calls, there's not much she can do. And then we end up in a situation like this where you have upset residents. And he's not the only one. We've actually had a couple calls because it's gotten really big all of a sudden. I don't think it would hurt to have an ordinance put in place, but we would really need to mirror kind of what TCQ is requiring as well. Just so that when Adelina does get that phone call, it's like, hey, the city does have an ordinance and this is what TCQ is requiring as well. Bill Williams has to register with TCQ because they are a tire.
Bill Williams knew coming in here, they couldn't have piled it. They aren't a new company. I mean, they have them
Yeah.
everywhere else, so they were aware. I don't think it hurt to have an ordinance. It's not gonna hurt us.
And it would just give something.
Well,
for her
that's
to
what
be
I'm
able to
saying. You're
sign.
sending a letter and what kind of threat is that? Please do that. Well, if they don't want to, no, we don't want to, so. They'll take
Unfortunately-
They'll take TCEQ.
Yes.
Does the number vary?
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Does the number vary with smaller? I know there's shops that are maybe behind homes and stuff like that. And I've seen tires there, but I mean, I'm sure they're not allowed to have that amount of tires, aren't there? Are they?
It varies by the type of business they're registered as. So Bill Williams is registered as a full wheel tire shop. There's a term, and I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head. And you can look up all the registered tire, I don't want to say manufacturers, because that's not what they are, but facilities. And so they do have to register with TCQ, they do have to abide by their.
My opinion is to go ahead and have Adelina start working on something like that because there is an issue and we've had problems with them putting the tires in our dumpsters at different times or just putting them outside the dumpsters.
Or piling them outside of the site.
Mhm.
So I think she needs to, in my opinion, I think we need to start looking at.
I think that's a wonderful idea. It helps her to be able to do her job as well.
Good.
Instead of saying the please and thank you, it's like,
Thanks.
okay, no, this is what the ordinance
This is an
is.
ordinance, yeah.
And then if they don't follow our ordinance, then it becomes, we have the ability to say, okay, now we're taking it.
But right now, without having that, I do appreciate the please and thank you whenever to them.
All right, so can we do whatever's necessary to start working on that process of developing an ordinance for council to look at? Okay. All right, awesome.
Thank you for the information, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I think you already sorted it out. That's why he needed to go early.
Can't see.
All right, so we're moving on to item number 5, reports, the city mayor report. So I want to say thank you to not just city staff, but also city administration. Council, our job is to sit up here. We're a legislative body. We give ordinances and resolutions and approve budgets and things like that. But it's the city staff and the city admin that actually has to put all these things into action. And it's a lot. And I appreciate each and every admin and staff member. And I don't think that they get things that they should get as often as they should. They do these things day in and day out. So I just want to say thank you to them. And then also to city council. A lot of time, we spend a lot of time talking to residents, going to events, looking through packets, reading budgets, researching. And I want to thank you guys for the time. Just, it
Megan
is a
knows I
lot.
don't read the budget.
Yeah, I know that, but
Okay.
other things,
But
yes,
you're welcome.
yes. And thank you for representing your residents, your constituents, and for being here at the meetings. Thank you for doing what you should do. You know, the evaluations, budget worksheets, things like that. So thank you for all those things, your professionalism and your commitment to Alpine. We may not always agree, and we're not meant to always agree, but we still respect one another. Also, planning and zoning is doing something a little different on Monday. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a historical walk looking at areas of downtown where they are thinking about putting historic overlays, which has a lot of benefits, not only for property values, but for tourism. Historic tourism brings in a lot of money. And so that's on April 24th. It starts at the Holland. And then it will end at the Granada with cocktails and music and so forth. So if you can attend that on the 24th, which is Monday at 6 p.m. starting at the Holland, I think that you'll really enjoy it and it'll be very informational. All right, no city attorney report this evening. So let's move on to city manager report, item number 1.
The first item that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention is the Governor's Community Achievement Award. This is the one that Adelina applies with for the Keep Alpine Beautiful. We've applied for it almost every year. The signs that you see coming into Alpine that say Alpine welcomes you, that is a result of a first place win with the Governor's Community Achievement Award. It is based by population and size. We are considered a small community. And we got second place this year. That is outstanding considering we compete with a lot of cities actually. Unfortunately, second place doesn't come with any monetary value, but we will get a certificate and recognition. So I just wanted to give Adelina a big shout out for that because it does take some time and effort to put that application and packet together. And you know, we presented it to council and then we get it up to, you know, the Keep Texas Beautiful program. So second place is a really good deal for us. The other item is continued support and partnerships. I think it has just been fantastic and how all of the partners within the area, whether they be private companies or other entities, are all reaching out and we're all actually working together. I know when we applied for the 5.6 million for the wastewater plant, I mean, you know, we did hear that, oh, you're not going to get any help. And actually, you know, everyone kind of stepped up and provided the letters and is excited as just as much as we are. Some of the opportunities that have been coming up, if you're not paying attention to the news, there is billions of dollars coming down for broadband. And so the city of Alpine has assisted with local support for Big Bend Telephone. So they are once again applying for a grant for additional broadband services within our region. Rusty Moore did reach out and ask for a letter of support, which I did provide. We've provided it in the past. This is a great opportunity. Our Big Bend Telephone is one of our big players in Alpine. So I really wanted to make sure that we supported them. They have supported us on numerous things as well. So I thought it was important. One thing that will come before council is, I know the COG has reached out as well as another organization. And what they're looking for is blanket letters of opportunity or support. And so I do have some concerns with something like that, especially as we're trying to build partnerships. I know one of the organizations was requesting the same type of letter of support for broadband. And I don't feel like we should have our own local company be competing with an organization we don't know about or that we're not aware of. So this will be a conversation, an action item on our next agenda. Unfortunately, it didn't make it to this agenda. We just actually got some feedback. But what they're looking for is basically a regional, I called it a blank check letter of support for broadband that they could use for anyone kind of who's applying for grant opportunities, especially with all this money coming down. So I really wanted to take the opportunity and discuss it with council and how we want to move forward with our letters of support. I'm a big supporter of local, start in-house, start with our community before we start bringing in, you know, your AT&T, your larger organizations. So I just wanted council to be aware that that's coming up, but BBT is excited. They are going to go after another big grant. They did not receive the last one that they applied for. But there's about 500 million on the table right now in our area. And so they're eager to apply and hopefully they will be successful this time and they can bring in additional services. The next item is the Pueblo Nuevo Park. So we issued our first RFP for concrete and concrete services. Unfortunately, it was considered non-responsive. What that means is they didn't fill out all the paperwork required to submit the RFP. Or the proposal. We only did receive one. And unfortunately, that means we kind of go back to square one. The RFP has been reissued. It will be in the paper this week. It is on our website. And our Parks and Streets Department is going to kind of send it out to people they know who provide those services. Hopefully that they will apply. Once we get the RFP awarded, that kind of is where the project starts. It's the concrete for all of the paths, the sidewalk, everything that's supposed to be set up on. But one of the things that we're also kind of eager about, next week, if you need something to do, I think the city has something every day. Because we've got Monday, the 24th, well, Wednesday, the 26th, we're asking for public input at Pueblo Nuevo for the actual equipment. So we're requesting the residents and the local community members to come and kind of sit down with us at the park. And what kind of equipment do you want? We're looking at color, age range. We are limited, unfortunately. When we applied for the grant, you know, we thought we could get 12 pieces and maybe now because of pricing, we can only get 8. But it's more knowing what 8 or what 4 or 5 does the community really want within their park. And so we're going to have a little public input hearing. The Parks and Wildlife Board loves when we get the public involved. So we can go back and say, hey, you know, this is a community project, 100%. So on Wednesday, April 26th at 5:30 at Pueblo Nuevo Park, we'll be meeting there to get the input.
The Lions Club.
Oh, the Lions Club is also donating some benches for our park. So we're excited about that. That's one less thing we have to worry about. Of course, they'll have their donated by and it will be a nice addition to the park. So we're excited. Of course, step 1 is that RFP. So if you know anyone in the concrete business, you know, send them to the city. The next one is a little bit of not the best news. I tried for 2 years. 2 years I could get TxDOT to continue. The city of Alpine has a right-of-way maintenance agreement with TxDOT. This was signed back in the 90s. It basically says the city is supposed to maintain the right-of-ways. This is the mowing, the watering of the trees, the replacing of the dead trees, all of that general maintenance. Well, Chris Weber was wonderful in working with me. I know our staffing is limited, but we officially have been notified that TxDOT will no longer continue the maintenance. So our Parks and Streets Department and any volunteers that would like to help us, the city of Alpine is now required to maintain Highway 90, 118, and the loop, whereas TxDOT was doing that in the past. Adelina actually is working on a Adopt a Tree program so that all these trees that we have through our downtown, our main fair area will be continued. We did also receive a donation of some trees, so we will be replacing some of those that are no longer alive. But moving forward, when you see our guys out there, they will be maintaining that area, and it's the mowing and the watering. So, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, that's a lot more on their plate.
Yes, and it's just to the city limits, so we're not going all the way to Presidio, Marfa.
Thank goodness.
Thanks, Megan.
Don't say it out loud because it might happen.
So, and I know, Counselor Sandate and I kind of visited after the parks meeting. The TxDOT used to have contracts, and I don't think they've been able to renew those contracts. And so what we're gonna do is I'm going to, sorry, I won't throw you in there. We're gonna contact some of the people who have those contracts to see if they continue them on a smaller scale for just the city. And so if they could come in and help with a little bit of that mowing and watering and things like that. That will be part of our discussion with the budget for the upcoming year. We won't include it in this year's budget, but I would like to include something in order to help continue that maintenance, because we do get a lot of public input in those trees. And you know, we had the incident with the little wooden bridge off of the loop, and so we want to make sure we continue with those maintenance. And also reduce some of the added responsibility on our parks department.
And when was this effective right now?
Last week, I got the official letter. Chris and I had been talking about it up until he
I
retired.
know.
They really were helping us with continuing these contracts. There has been changeover at TxDOT, especially in the regional area. We do have a signed agreement. It is still a valid document, and it does require us to do certain things. He worked really hard with us, so I knew it was coming. I just thought we had a couple more years. And so we've been officially notified. You know, if we know some community service,
Yes, yes.
so.
Watering the trees. High
Yes.
school students often need community service.
So we're gonna look at everything we can, and the Parks Board is aware, or not Parks Board, well, they are aware. But the Street and Parks Department are also aware. So we're coming up with a game plan. The only thing that, on the negative side of that, we do have some business owners that don't want the trees. And if given the option, they would just cut them down. So that is not an option. We are replacing a few of the trees that didn't grow or were trimmed in the direction they should have. So instead of them going up, they're kind of coming out and they're blocking part of a road or the sidewalk. And we are gonna go back in and change those out so that it does become a better fit for the city. So we're excited though. Adelina's got a lot of good ideas for that. The next,
Can I mention something first? Okay, so your next item, the finance. Thank you for getting this back on the agenda. Really appreciate it. Can we start doing it monthly?
oh yes,
Okay, because we're entering budget season.
yes.
Okay.
So I do apologize. When you look at the role of the finance director in the finance department, I don't think a lot of people understand. I did not personally understand everything that goes with it and the level of expectations. And unfortunately, there was just so much to learn. And it becomes very overwhelming. It becomes very scary. And so unfortunately, we got off track on the expenditure and revenue reports. You have up until February. I went ahead and I didn't do just one. I broke them down so we can post them individually. But there's still quite a bit of cleanup to do. And I know, you know, Daryl's here and Abel's here. I've been working with all of the department directors and supervisors, and they all understand that we're trying to go back and fix anything that could be wrong. So these numbers is what I would consider unaudited. There are numbers in here, or line items that like, oh, they're over 10,000. Well, no, they're not over 10,000. An expense was posted to the wrong account. A prime example is the water department paid for the software for both the water and the gas. And so we didn't budget for two separate, you know, departments. It was just the one. So it's fixing things like that. The other side of this report, you'll see some of the revenue looks a little low. The revenue that we receive for administrative and franchise fees has actually not been recorded for the whole year. So that's me going back and pulling all of those reports to move the money from the water department, sanitation, wastewater, gas department, airport, and actually taking their expense and putting it into the general fund. This is an ordinance that was approved by council in 14. So it's getting that information in there. All the departments and directors have been updated with the most up-to-date, we're a little behind, budget report, but they're also getting the line item details so that they can come back in and say, hey, no, this really should have come out of this line item, not this line item. I know Chris Rugia, who's here, has sent me an email with his list of corrections. Abel has brought his as well. So all the departments are actually working with us to get this to where it needs to be again. So you'll start seeing better numbers, or I shouldn't say better, more accurate numbers in a March, April timeframe. But I wanted to kind of go through a rundown of where we're at. So the general fund revenue, so as of February, it's about 41%. So you're not quite at 6 months. We had brought in 56.9% in revenue. Now, mind you, that doesn't include any of the administrative and franchise fees. And we were at about 30.8% of the expenses. Our heavy expenses come out in the summer with our paving. We are working on some contracts. RFPs have been issued for paving. At the last meeting, you were aware that we didn't get the full road material request in, so we've reissued that one so that Eddie can have all the needed materials to seal coat. So he's been working on other projects. The water, wastewater, and sanitation fund, they brought in about 1.9 million, which is about 34.19%. And they've expended 1.5 million, which is about 20% of what's been budgeted. When you go into a department and you tell them, what do you need? And then they provide you this list and you actually buy it, morale definitely changes. So they haven't been given the buy whatever you want kind of pass, but the water department, wastewater, and our environmental services have all actually gone through and started building up the inventory, replacing the things that have been broken, buying the necessities. I was a little shocked when I had the conversation with them. Our interim director, Andrew Devaney, sat them all down and said, what do you guys need? And when they said gloves, can we get 2 sets of waders, one for water and one for sewer backups? It was a little, kind of made me upset and cry at the same time, because these are basics that we should have been providing. So Andrew's gone in and basically taken their basics, and it's no longer an issue. So they're doing really good. The one item that you'll see coming up, our aerators at our wastewater plant are up, they're running. I don't want to say anything else in but we did get the final invoice, and it's of course a little over $400,000 that we will pay out in April to the Alltech company, and then the remaining portion of the engineering funds. But we're excited. This was kind of one of those step one in our 5.6 million plan. So I know that when you have now agitated it to where it needs to be, it kind of makes the rest of the stuff not work as well, because it's used to it not, being so thick and flowing. And so of course, a few of our other items out there are starting to wear and tear because they're not used to having that actual flow going through. But we're moving forward with it. On our airport fund, currently airports brought in 395,000, which is about 51% of what was budgeted. And they have spent 345,000, which is about 45. As you've heard me for 2 years tell you, airport's always going to be right neck and neck with revenue and expenses. Able just needs to sell more fuel and not have expenses.
Yeah, get on that, Able.
Just have a big party of it. So the next item is the hotel occupancy tax. So far we're at 206,000, which is 31%, and our expenditures are at 208,000, which is about 26%. That is a little bit different. We receive most of these payments within a quarter. So if you review each of the revenue sheets for the different months for HOT, you'll notice the first month you brought in $9,000. Well, then in January, we brought in $128,000. So their revenue fluctuates based on the quarters. The larger hotels are required to pay quarterly. So that's when we'll see a lot of the bigger numbers come in. Some of them do pay monthly because obviously you don't want to carry that liability. But we're really happy with how the hot fund works. I know poor Chris, we've got a marketing plan, we've got some discussions ahead of us. It always happens at the end of the fiscal year. I'm telling him, spend it, spend it, spend it. We have too much. We are required with the 51% for advertising. All of our big events are coming up. If you have a free moment this weekend, we have Spirits of the West with it's sponsored by the Hot Funds. We have Viva Big Ben. There's just so many, Fiesta 1888, so many things happening in the next 6 months. And so you'll start to see those numbers change as well. The gas currently has brought in 1.1 million, about 53%, and expended 683,000, about 30%. Their biggest income or revenue will happen in the winter months. And then it will start to decline. We will be watching this budget a little bit closer this year, only because the anticipated where we should be at for being, February is a little bit lower than anticipated. They'll start to dwindle significantly as we get into May, June, July, and August. And so we want to make sure as we're looking at that one, that we're adjusting the expenses based on that revenue. The gas utility has a net position of positive. They have money, they don't have reserve accounts. So we do have some wiggle room with them, but would like to not use it unless it's necessary. His big projects was those city gates. And then his next big expense, which was approved by council, is the rectifier off of Fighting Buck, which is.
And they're working on that right now.
They're trying to get the procurement. And so that will be a big hit, but if you've noticed, he's only at 30%. So minus the employee salaries, we don't expect too many big expenses, but he will have to maintain the federal required DIP projects. So we don't want to make cuts where it will hurt him on that side, but we definitely are going to monitor to make sure, we stay within our budget here. And the last one, the most boring one of them all, is our interest and sinking. February, we did make our payment. So we had brought in 138,000 as of February, which is about 92%. And then of course we expended our first payment. March 1st is our deadline for the first payment. So the checks get cut in February. Because if they don't have them March 1st, they will tell you and they will penalize you. So we got those out. Expenditures about 94%. We do have a bit of a balance in that account, so we're never worried that we don't have the money when we need to spend it. It's actually there. Some of the other key things throughout the budget, when you look at it, you'll start to see the salaries slightly change. I've sent out a friendly reminder to all of our directors, maybe a review of your employees. We did budget for merit raises. And I don't want our employees to think that there's not an opportunity for a merit raise. Our directors have set up growth plans with our employees. So as long as they're following their growth plan, we should start seeing some of those merit raises come into play. So you'll see a little bit of an increase there on expenditures, but it is budgeted for. So that should come down the pipeline. On April 4th, I did notify all of the supervisors and directors that chop. If you've got a big project or a capital asset that you want to get into place, you need to start on it now. I don't feel comfortable with us trying to cut a check for 100,000 on September 30th for a project that hasn't really been completed, but we're paying for it. So they've all been kind of told that if you've got something in your budget, a capital improvement or an asset that needs to be purchased, to start moving that direction. Procurement is the hardest thing with the city of Alpine. The state does have specific guidelines to it when we have to procure, but we are so isolated in some ways that it's hard to get people to respond to be able to get what we need. Or they'll say, yeah, we'll do it, but we're going to add 50% for mobility. Or, you can purchase this, but it's going to cost you 50,000 to move it from Georgia to Texas when it comes to certain things. With the parks project, we're using buy board. So that will help us with the procurement. So they all are kind of aware that, if you're going to do this, you need to do it now. Otherwise it won't happen this fiscal year. So they've all been made aware of that. I know our street department is got the RFP out for some of that paving, especially where Eddie had discussed adding a few streets and splitting up his seal coating. That's included. The airport's included for the remainder of the taxiway, and Country Club Estates is included as well. The water department, it's fun when they say we need a new backhoe, and then they come in with, well, you know, we really think we want this instead. So they're narrowing it down. Buy Board does have a agreement with Caterpillar. I believe it's Caterpillar. It's one of the companies. And we've already gotten quotes to look at backhoes new and used. So that will be something that will be purchased this year as well. So those big ticket items that we've been talking about are actually going to start happening. So that's exciting. So you'll see some of these numbers jump because we're asking the departments to get your projects.
So did you get feedback from council about budget workshop dates? What works for everybody? When are we gonna start having those?
So in May, on May 9th, the budget calendar will be presented. I know our newest council member, Darren, who was unopposed. I've talked to him a little bit about it. Judy and you have both provided. Chris, I don't think you had any.
I'm
Yeah.
good with
Martine was good with it, so we'll put together a budget calendar. And so I really do encourage everyone in this room to attend. It's not just for nerdy people who like numbers. But
I
we're
can
looking-
attest to that.
but we're looking at doing things different. So the past two budgets, I've slightly changed them a little bit every time. Not only going off what is required, there are state requirements, there are city policies in place for them. But start redirecting our budget. All of the departments have been made aware. We're not doing buckets. A line item is typically a bucket of money, and you do as much as you can with this bucket. And so my thought process is every budget workshop is going to address different sides of our budget, whether it be a specific department, employees, capital assets, and we'll have multiple, and they'll be on a weeknight, and we'll have a couple on a Saturday, but they'll be consecutive. Because we are restricted to having the budget and taxes approved by the end of the fiscal year, it's hard to spread them out. Otherwise, we don't get enough time to gather what everyone's saying and put it in. Directors have been told that you don't get your bucket. I want to know what projects you want to complete. I think it's important as we've gone through the strategic plan, which is part of our budget process. As we've gone through the different, wants and needs of our community, is actually putting those that you can physically see in our budget. We're gonna do 500 spay and neuters, and we're gonna put a number to it because you're right there.
Yeah.
You're gonna put a number to it, and then at the end of the year, Councilor Rodriguez has come back and was like, how many of those spay and neuters did we do? And you can show it and you can see it and say, this is how many we did, and these were the partnerships in order to do them, and who worked with us, and did we have free clinics? Paving is pretty easy, except for instead of going into the budget with, we're gonna put 400,000 for paving, it's no, we're gonna put 400,000 because we're gonna pave this street, this street, this street, this street, this street. We go out for RFP and I come back to council with, okay, this is what it's actually gonna cost us. What do we want to knock off, or what do we want to add because we got a really good deal or something? But actually having it laid out. I know I've talked to Daryl Artifilasoya with, how many community projects. He doesn't always list out everything he does for the community, but you have the pumpkin patch, you have the DARE program, but actually knowing how much are we spending to these services. So one of the questions on your budget questionnaire will be, what services do you want to see? What community involvement? What do you want to cut? Nobody wants to cut services, but sometimes we have to say no. Maybe this year we don't focus heavily on, seal coating because we're going to focus heavily on employees and balance that out. But we will have, right now, I've got about 5 budget workshops, and then we'll have our regular workshops within our council meetings. We are tied to specific dates. You have to advertise specifically how you're going to do your taxes. You have to advertise your budget process. You have to have, of course, your public hearings. And so it's tying those to everyone's calendars as well. Anytime we miss one, it throws the calendar off. And so that's when, the first year, I think we had a meeting every week for 3 months straight. It was because trying to get them moving forward. But I really do encourage everyone to participate. It's really not just about the numbers. The numbers are something I enjoy because they don't yell at you. But it's really good to have, I really want something in my community. I would broadband. How do we support broadband? How do we support other, organizations? And we're gonna have that discussion with the library, and the family crisis contract comes up this year. And are we renewing things? And how can we continue to help our community so that we can continue to grow? I've been telling everyone we're under 6,000 in population. Marcy corrects me because it is 6,035. So we're right above it again. But
It fluctuates, yeah.
we are changing, and I think our strategic plan has really shown that, hey, let's take care of the big things so that we can continue to do the better things.
Okay, so when is the budget worksheet gonna come to council so that we have time to think about it and prepare it?
So I'd like to have Darren on board. I don't know if anyone would object. I can send it to him without him being sworn in. But it's almost prepared. The questions are a little bit different this year. I've been doing a lot of kind of just deep thinking, insight research with, what truly do we want to get out of this budget? I know Councilor Rodriguez at one point had said about performance budget and stuff like that. And I love the concept. I really do. It's transitioning to things like that, the city hasn't done. So you're probably going to get the questions the first week of May. And, we'll go through budget workshops. I think you'll have longer time to answer them, only because I think with hopefully public input and that communication and interaction, that you'll have like, hey, what, my precinct really, or my ward really wants this, or what, the community is really asking for this. These questions are in addition to what we're doing with the strategic plan. And so the big piece of this upcoming budget will be employees. I am going to make some pretty big recommendations, and I really do want the council to consider it. And the reason being is I look at our street department and there are 7 openings. And we did add a couple extra positions, but it's hard when you want someone who has a talent that you're not going to pay that talent for. And so I really want to sit down and have that conversation with, let's restructure. That's a new organizational chart. Doesn't mean we have to apply or budget for every position, but that we have the ability for growth. Like if I'm an equipment operator, I know I can move up, and then it's going to be there for me to move up. But no, when it comes to the finance, revenue, and expenses, this is just a very small part of the big picture. And if anyone ever wants to spend a couple hours with me, I'm more than welcome.
As long as we don't talk numbers, I'm good. Got tomorrow, 2 hours.
Century left.
Over a glass of wine.
I had a question going back to expenses and stuff on your building maintenance at the police department. Is that an error, or is something happening with Daryl we need to be helping with? Because there is a big difference in what's budgeted to what we're at.
So he has an encumbered 10 grand. His generator is no longer working. So we've been struggling with it for quite some time. We've been doing a lot of internal. We reached out to the COG to see if they could assist us. He found a group out of Odessa, I believe, Midland area, to come and see if they could fix it. We've had all these hopefuls without having to replace it. We are at the point now where we're having to look at replacing it, but we've come up with a couple temporary solutions until either the next budget, or hopefully the county will give us the generator that they shouldn't be using anymore, that they donated to the city.
So that's
Well, they will when they get their other one hooked up.
Mhm.
That's what I was told.
Yeah, that's what
Why
the
don't we
judge
have
told
it?
us.
been quite a while though, right? That's been
A long
Over a year and a half.
Yeah.
And then Judge Hennington did have a conversation with him. He wasn't sure why it has taken this long. So we are looking for solutions so that we don't have that major impact on expenses and revenue. So we've been, oh, fingers crossed. I think the last quote he got was 43,000. 59,000.
For a generator?
Let's stay on top of the county with that, because I mean, we don't want to wait till he's out. I mean, the generators.
And we don't, and like I said, we've definitely,
And will that one
We did.
transfer over? Will the one at the jail transfer over?
Oh, no, you have to take it.
Go look. Don't have
Yeah.
anything else to do.
Yeah, yeah, we are, Megan and I had a meeting with the county judge Monday, and we reiterated that we need that generator. And he's working towards it, so I think he'll get it done.
and so like I said, these are, I call them unaudited numbers, because there are some corrections that need to be made, as you're aware, and some journal entries that need to be put in to clean up, and then having the departments go back in and verify that the expenses came out of the line items. We've had a changeover in the city, which, you know, it happens in every city, but what I've noticed is the transition from positions to positions, and that knowledge is really hard to keep. We don't have this, here's your manual. It's, here you go, have fun, good luck. And so we have some administrative assistants who don't know the line items, and so they're kind of like, oh, well, I'll just put it here. And so it's going back and sitting down with them, is like, well, no, your uniform shouldn't come out of, you know, cell phones. It should come out of uniforms, and that's just an example, but it's cleaning that up so that you get a true understanding. And all the departments have been made aware, go over your line items, because then we know the true cost. Whereas if in the past, the city would kind of put it in other places, like, well, office supplies and field supplies are the same thing, but they're not. So we want you to go over on something so that we can go back and say, okay, this is what it actually costs. So for your, not your next meeting, but the second meeting in May, you'll have a couple more months.
Thank you.
So do the expenses not go to, say, the department head before they hit, yeah, as where to where they're supposed to be placed, or where he wants it?
So we work off of a purchase order system. So, and we just, poor guys, I just cracked down on them. Every employee would call and say, hey, I need a PO. And, you know, Florinda or Grisel or myself or Alicia, you have all these employees who could issue them. And, you know, the employee would be like, oh, but I don't know what a line item it is. Just use whatever I used last time. And so we cracked down with, okay, specific people can request purchase orders, and poor Florinda, I get after her because she doesn't even hold me accountable with, they have to give you the line item. If they don't give you the line item, you don't give them the. And so that's what gets us, or they'll guess. And, you know, we have a new finance team who will, that's what they're telling me. Why would I question it? You know, it's their money, they know where they're spending it from. So it's just going back and cleaning.
You have any standing POs?
No. Those would be requisitions. We don't operate off requisitions. Departments would love it.
I love them. That's okay. though.
No, every purchase, besides what's been contracted and approved, everything has to basically have a PO. So it's an open and close. And that's another thing, we're having to go back and clean up the POs. Once again, some of your encumbrances are incorrect. It's just a training. Like I said, one finance clerk has been there since September, the other one's been there since January. And so neither one of them fully understand our software.
So that's why we're cleaning up a whole bunch. Okay, anything else? We ready?
That's it in my side. I tried to make it
Council?
short.
All right, so city staff updates, none. We're going to move into public hearings. Let me remind everyone that council cannot comment if somebody stands up to talk in regards to a public hearing item. All right, so public hearing item number 1, to obtain citizen views and comments regarding special use permit 2023-04-01, a special use permit for the purpose of allowing the applicant Alco, a protected series of Start Local LLC, to obtain a mixed beverage license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to establish a bar at the subject property. Do we have anyone here to speak on this? Okay, come on up. Please state your name.
Rich Rugia, I live in Ward 3. I strongly support both of these permits. Everybody in town is happy that the Granada Theater is open again. And the Saddle Club, which will be under a new name, is about to be open again. And both of these permits are critical to, as revenue streams for those to be successful. So I'm really looking forward to, once this is all in place, there can be more events at the Granada. More of them can be free because there's a good revenue stream. It's just, everything works better once these are done. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else here to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to public hearing item number 2. Public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding special use permit 2023-04-02. A special use permit for the purpose of allowing the applicant Bruce and Hughes, a protected series of Start Local LLC, to obtain a beer and wine license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to establish an art gallery where beer and wine may be sold. Is there anyone here to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on to public hearing item number 3. Public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding short-term rental special use permit applications. Is there anyone here to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on to the consent agenda. City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda has 5 items this evening. Item 1, approval of April 4th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of the excused absence of Councilor Rodriguez from the April 4th, 2023 regular city council meeting. Item 3, approval of the appointment of Larry Nichols to the Place 3 Arts and Historic position on the Hotel Occupancy Tax Committee. Item 4, approval of short-term rental special use permit for 417 South Berkeley. Record property owner is 5350 Holdings LLC. And item 5, approval of fiscal year 2022-2023 second quarter investment report.
Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
Vote, all in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. So consent agenda has been approved. All right, before we go into item number 8, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. She's just visiting. Yeah. Yeah, because I was the one to a meeting this morning. She said she enjoyed it. Okay, all right, we're gonna go back into session. All right, so we are now at item number 8, information discussion items. The first one, city secretary.
The first item is Animal Advisory Board update by Chair of the Board, Patsy Colcher.
Good evening, council. Good evening, everybody. This is our Q1 report. And I don't know where the slides are, so I'll just kind of wing it. There they are. First slide is just
Technical difficulty.
1 second, just 1 second.
It's just up in one.
I'm lost in cyberspace.
Yeah, first slide is just our committee, just to let everybody know who's on the committee. We do have a vacancy and we have had that vacancy since December 2022. So we are looking to fill that. Our next slide is our ordinance review. This has not come to council yet, but you will be seeing it soon. We amended chapter 10, we reformatted it to meet updated ordinance structure. And we also worked on Article 5 kennels. We feel like that there needs to be a deferral to the city council for kennels. Permits may be deferred to city council for public hearings, so interested persons may have the opportunity to voice concern. And it adds a neighbor public hearing notice requirement to neighbors within 200 feet. So we thought that was a good idea. And we also updated the fee schedule. We had fees spread out all over chapter 10. We have removed them and now there is going to be a schedule of fees, so we don't have to update ordinances every single time we want to change the fees. So that was kind of what we did on the ordinances. Next slide, please. You got it. Fiscal year 2023 objectives. We are still reviewing our ordinances. The registration and lease compliance to be combined with informational public service announcement for utility bill insertion. We are going to take action on a PSA for that right now and start getting it attached to the PSA that's now being done by the Alpine Animal Services. We talked about a stuffer. We're not sure how we're going to design it or how it's going to work, but we'd like to put a stuffer into the utility bills to remind everybody. And I do know that the utility bill donation project for Alpine Animal Services is still on hold as we look at the software for that. We still need to visit the wildlife management efforts and explore feasibility of relocation or migration of wildlife nuisance populations within the city. And that's pretty daunting to us. I won't lie to you. We're going to have to really think on that. So that is still on our list. Next slide. Talked to you all a little bit last time about a community-centered animal services, human animal assistance support or something like that. Anyway, HOS, I've called it HOS so long, I can't even tell you what it stands for. But it's being a collector. It used to be we were a collector of animals. We're now a connector for animals. And I went through the list of what that means and just wanted to report that Jennifer has done such a good job. Today, the shelter only houses those animals in distress and those where all other options have been exhausted. When somebody does come to the shelter now and they say, I want to relinquish, she gives them a list of things that they could do on their own before they relinquish. And then those animals that are in distress, she does take, and the shelter population has been impacted nicely because of that. So I just want to report that's HOS at work. And that's it. I made it short, sweet. We are going to start the PSAs again on KVLF. I just kind of let it go. And now I'm going to have to get my voice tuned up and I'm going to do it again. And any questions? Okay, did I do all right, Judy? Is that our 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Very well.
I
you.
took notes on how to keep it short.
But you have to reread them over and over and over.
Okay, so now we're moving to information or discussion item number 2. Gio, can you pull up the PDF for me, please?
Yes.
And this is discuss the possibility of participating in the Museum on Main Street, or MOMS. Everybody likes acronyms, so this one's MOMS program, a traveling exhibition in partnership between the Smithsonian Institute and the Texas Historical Commission. This is a very exciting program that could have a tremendous impact on Alpine. So I'm going to turn it over to the
All
professional.
right, well, yeah, I'm Chris Ruccia, Director of Tourism for the city. This slideshow is the full presentation package from a talk that I'm not going to give. So we'll speed through this and I'll just give you some highlights. What this program is a partnership between the Smithsonian Institute and the Texas Historical Commission. It's an exhibit that the Smithsonian put together that's called Crossroads: Change in Rural America. And it also involves, well, it's 6 stops. It's a traveling exhibit that's it goes from summer 2024 through late spring of 2025. And each of the stops is 6 weeks. They're all in the state of Texas, and they're tied to the Heritage Trail regions. We're in the Texas Mountain Trail region. We're really active with the Texas Mountain Trail. There are 10 trail regions, only 6 can participate this time. There's going to be another one in a couple of years after this one concludes, where the remaining 4 would be have priority, but there's 6 shots, and any community that's under 15,000 in population can apply within those regions. So Gia, why don't you go ahead and flip through a few of those slides, and we'll get to the one about, well, keep going. Keep going. This one gives a little bit of picture about what the program is, but we're looking for the one that's called Impact. So just flip through till you get to that one. The main thing, this has been done in other parts of the country, and tens of thousands of people come to see these exhibits, and so it can have a large visitation beneficial impact. One of the things, so this has some of these numbers in Maryland between 2019 and 2020. 42,000 attendees to the exhibit, 32,000 in 2016, 2017, 64,000 in 2012, 2013. That's across, I think, the 6 stops, but it's not a small number of visitors. And so one of the things that they're really stressing is community partnerships. They're looking for these exhibits to have a large impact on a larger geographic region if possible. We're really well situated for that because our towns are so remote, that we're so interdependent on one another. And so we're talking with, I had an initial exploratory meeting with the Texas Mountain Trail Region Director, with the Museum of the Big Bend. The mayor was there. We also had Alpine Historical Association as an obvious partner in the discussions at that meeting. And let's see, and one of the things that they're looking at is a lot of different kinds of community impact, a lot of different partner organizations involved. And by the end of this webinar, Heather Yaden and I had about 30 different, organizations that we could partner with easily that would fit with the program. So we're really well situated with that. Obviously, when you have a program coming in, what's it going to cost us is a big question. The development of the exhibit itself, the Smithsonian and Historical Commission take care of that. If we were selected, we'd pay for the shipping of the exhibit from its last location to ours, and we would pay for the development of our local version of the exhibit. There's a lot of training, museum and exhibition training, and
Would be housed.
my vision for it is that the main exhibit, yes, the Museum of the Big Bend has already identified what space it would go in. But the local part, what I would really like to see is that kind of the anchor for the local part is at the museum, but then it sends people all around the Big Bend region. It sends people to other places in Alpine, but also Fort Davis, Marfa, Terlingua. Yeah, we could have different mini displays at places that were relevant to the kind of story that's being told in the exhibit. So I think we have a really good opportunity not only to benefit Alpine, but the rest of the region as well.
For how long does it stay?
It stays for 6 weeks.
Were your hot funds paid for?
That They certainly can, easily, they would fall under
Do we want
historical,
that, though?
but, the cost that they're estimating is $5,000 to $7,000, which
Okay.
for, a project under hot funds is not very much.
Right.
But even then, if we have a dozen partners and most of them contribute even a nominal amount, we'll get a long way there. So I don't think that the hotel tax would have to pay it all even. I think it would be easy to get between sponsors and partners. I think we'd cover the cost really easily. So I'm meeting with Mary Bones at the museum and Wendy Little from Texas Mountain Trail Region tomorrow morning. We're gonna actually start working on the application. And what I'm bringing this to you with the request that possibly at the May 9th meeting, you might have a resolution of support that you could consider, and we could include that in the application. So that's really what I'm bringing to you. I think we have a good chance. Of course, it's not guaranteed, but
Can you tell them who some of the potential partners are?
yes. Obviously, the Fort Davis Chamber, Marfa Tourism. Oh, I turned my phone off to be polite, and that's what my
Thank
list
you,
is.
thank you.
Let's see, Alpine Historical Association. Boy, it was a brainstorm. And then now,
The Chihuahuan
So-
Desert Research.
yeah, Chihuahua Desert
Institute,
Research.
uh,
Borderlands Research
Borderlands.
Institute, the land use is a part of it. One thing that I would really like to see is if we could get Borderlands Research, Nature Conservancy, and the Davis Mountain Trans-Pecos Heritage Association all working together on a project. I would love to see that. So there's a lot of people to reach out to, and anyone involved with historical stuff. There's the Blackwell School, the historic site, Fort Davis. You just start writing names, and the next one's there to write down. So I've got on my turned off phone, I've got a really long list.
Chris, would you be able to provide us with a sample resolution? Or would you want us to develop that?
Whatever you prefer.
Can you provide us
Could
a
you?
sample?
provide that for me? Put our
Sure.
approval on
I
it?
think
bet.
they had one in their packet. They wanted it to
There
be,
you go.
they wanted it to be original though. They didn't want it
Okay.
to like follow
I'll
the
get
template.
GPT to
You
rewrite
have
it.
certain
Yeah, no
language
problem.
that they use.
Right, and it is a very short turnaround. The applications due
Yeah.
by May 15th, and we would like to have it in before then.
Mhm.
So that's why we're hoping to get the resolution back.
Exactly. So
May
yeah,
9th.
ideal, hopefully we'll have the application finished by the 9th and ready to just attach the resolution, which would go to Geo before the Wednesday before that meeting.
And we were gonna
Unlike
have partners
slides.
too, such as the Alpine Independent School District, Soul
Yeah,
Roth is gonna be
exactly.
a partner,
Yeah,
right? Because it involves the whole community.
yeah. Anybody involved with education, with history, with the arts, Big Bend Art
Yeah,
Council,
arts.
the cultural district that they started that board. We can, yeah. We can just keep going. Yeah.
Exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. Any questions for Chris? Okay, good. All right, so discussion item number 3, we've taken care of. We're on to discussion item number 4. So we're going to discuss an idea from Roger Horton for utilizing shuttle buses using clean energy to pick people up at the train station, take them to the park, and the hydrogen hub concept. Roger Horton is actually from San Angelo, correct?
Yes.
I think there's a typo on there. It says resident, but.
Good evening, Mayor, council, staff. Prior to April 7th, we had requested a letter of support from the city of Alpine and the surrounding communities. Actually, we got letters of support for the Trans-Permian hydrogen hub from El Paso through Midland, San Angelo, San Antonio, even Marfa and Presidio. And we had a response from each of those communities. And we're hoping that we can get a response from Alpine tonight. Well, if not the response tonight, but we'd like to get a letter of support for this hydrogen hub concept. And in the limited time that I have to discuss it, it boils down to an RFP that came from the Department of Energy sometime back that offered up probably around $6 to $7 billion worth of funding for development of hydrogen production, hydrogen utilization, hydrogen transportation, and all the infrastructure that goes with it. And part of that infrastructure money is it includes everything from even healthcare services, housing and communities, stuff like that, to properly develop this concept out. So after we made the submission, and I have to back up a little bit, the company I represent is MMEX Resources Corporation. After we made the submission to the DOE, we were approved for further consideration. Along with our approval was also the Port of Corpus Christi, Horizon's Clean Energy H2 hub. And so after we both got approval, we merged these two together. So basically, I'm here tonight representing the Integrated Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub proposal between Corpus Christi and the what would have been the former Trans-Permian H2 hub. Try to condense all that together is there's about $1 billion on the table. And in negotiations between these two hubs, at least 100 million or so that has been earmarked for West Texas. One of the concepts that we've come up with that we would like to propose, actually propose the development of, because there's a lot of study that needs to be done prior to spending any money or burning up a bunch of people's time. But that concept would be a hydrogen fuel cell driven bus service that would serve Alpine directly, but would also serve Marfa, Marathon, and Fort Davis. And the local bus would be sort of a shuttle that would operate on a schedule, start at Sul Ross College, or start downtown, Sul Ross College, travel through town on a regular basis. Aside from that, we would have a bus that would be more like a tour bus or a luxury bus that would be timed to the arrival and departure of Amtrak. And that bus could go as far as the Big Bend and Fort Davis, Marfa, Maryland. So those are the things but that's a concept. We'd have to work together to figure out a lot of the details. I mean, we're down to bus stops and timing and hours of service and demand. And there, of course, there have to be a demand study for every bit of this. But primarily, we need your support for the integrated regional clean hydrogen hub, basically the Trans-Permian H2 hub. We would love to have a letter of support for that.
You said there's a lot of money earmarked for West Texas. Going into this with Corpus Christi, does that affect the money that we will get, seeing as they're not in West Texas?
There's $1 billion or $1.25 is the total number of the grant application. And if you look at it's not numbered, but if you look at this part of the presentation that you have, you'll see some boxes down around the Gulf Coast. Well, those would be recipients also of that 1.25 billion. But going into that, the people that I represent wanted to make absolutely sure that the Gulf Coast didn't just consume it and use us as a segue. So consequently, the company I represent got at least $100 million earmarked for West Texas out of that 1.2. I also emailed a grant, and I think Mayor Eves, you may have received it.
Mhm.
Behind this, the Department of Transportation, not the Department of Energy, but the Department of Transportation has issued an RFP for $700 million worth of grants, which is nationwide. That would include electric vehicle charging stations, infrastructure, public transit, and hydrogen fuel cell recharging stations. And mind you, that that every bit of that money doesn't have to be delegated to a specific purpose. I mean, it's not like we're not trying to fund buses. We're not trying to fund charging stations. We also know that if there's an economic advantage for a community, and that requires employees, and it requires subsidized housing, or that requires healthcare facilities, whatever goes along with that can be part of that grant application. That one, frankly, we've made a proposal to one of your friends and neighbors just up the road here at Fort Stockton to help them. They struggle with middle income housing. There's lots of low end housing and there's lots of high end housing, but middle income housing is a struggle. Actually, it is in San Angelo too.
I think it's in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Here also.
So part of the application is going to include some monies for that. And when we get down to utilization of the funds and disbursement of funds, that kind of thing, this is not a top-down event. What happens is once we get approved for the funding for the project, at that point, we actually take the involved communities, representative from each community, basically form up a committee and then decide how the funds would be distributed and spent. And
Questions?
Whatever. I'm smart enough to ask them.
So the hydrogen hub is like one station somewhere. I don't know,
no, it's a
maybe-
demographic.
Okay,
You know, the hub, if you look on, if you look at this.
I think we have this.
Yeah.
Is it in your-
You'll see a box drawn on there, sort of a diagonal box. And that's actually the hub along with the boxes that are along the Gulf Coast. And the core of it would actually, the core of the West Texas side of it would be a fairly large facility that's under development about 19 miles outside Fort Stockton. And that facility is going to produce probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 8,000 tons of hydrogen a day.
Okay, so that's what I was trying to get at. So it's outside of Fort Stockton.
Yes, that's,
Okay.
well, that's a production facility, but there could be others. The hub concept is just a demographic of space. And the economic impact happens within that box.
Right.
If you look at the very front cover, it didn't, when this was printed or when this was made, it bleeds over into Mexico, but it actually follows the border. But that box is where the funding would be, and that's where the projects will be located.
What page are you looking at?
Oh, the very first cover. Where's the cover page? You just look at the cover page, you'll see a diagonal box there.
Oh, okay.
That's the hub.
And so that's where the money would be spent
Money,
for
there'd be,
whatever
there's a,
it is.
yeah, it's a big space, and for the numbers that it takes to do anything nowadays, $100 million, which is a god awful amount of money, doesn't sound like much. But in pulling this together, I basically drove that entire box. And there's a lot of blue sky in that box. It's a long way from El Paso to San Angelo.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of underserved communities within that area where a few $1 million could maybe go a long way in support for those communities.
Okay.
And the mission is overall economic growth is what it boils down to. And I'm apolitical as a person, but the simple truth is that $7 billion plus the $700 million is going to come out of Washington, DC. It's coming out of there. Now, whether it lands in West Texas, any of it here, or every dime of it ends up in Illinois, is something to consider. I think it's an opportunity. We're not, as a MMEX Corporation, they own their property, their project's going to develop, whether this hub comes together or not. The Far East and European markets are hungry for green energy, basically methanol and ammonia that are made from green sources. And so that's really our primary customer, but we're going to build it here. So all of this will contribute to local economies. And we're just hoping for a letter of support.
Can you tell me what would determine the amount of money or funds that a community would get? Is it by population? Is it by need? Is it what?
That would be determined simply by the group that would be formed once the funds were allocated. If that makes any sense.
So you said the group would be like members of Alpine? would be in this group?
Alpine would have a representative.
Okay.
Fort Stockton would have a representative. San
There will be
Antonio-
no guidelines. Basically, everybody's going to be fighting for the same money.
Well, I don't know if fighting would be the right term.
Well, everybody's going to want the majority of the money. I mean, we're going to go for as much as we can get.
Well, I get that.
I think we need to take a step back. So you want a letter of support from the city for a concept for a hydrogen hub that has no impact on Alpine currently.
Because we don't have the funding.
Well, the concept
We don't
that,
have a production unit here,
no,
but it's gonna go in Fort Stockton. Is that what I was understanding?
well, it'll be 19 miles outside of Fort Stockton.
And then what about San Angelo? Are they gonna have a production site?
San Angelo is dealing with, they may, with a capital M, they may have an opportunity to put a facility there to build the buses.
I guess that was what my question was as to what would determine what we would get as a community. Because you're asking for a letter that could end up with Alpine getting nothing. Like I said, there's going to be no guidelines, no nothing as to how the money is spent, or maybe nothing substantial.
Well, Councilwoman, if you're looking for me to guarantee a percentage or guarantee a fixed amount, we don't even have the grant awarded yet.
No, and I understand that, but I guess what I want you to know if there were guidelines set and kind of, but what the city manager is telling us, you talked about having employment
Employment
opportunities,
how-
and we don't know that the hub's even going to be here.
How would that come to Alpine if we don't have a production site, or we don't have a bus facility, or if we don't have these concepts you're talking about? How do we participate in that pot of money?
Well, first off, you're part of the hub. your Alpine is included in the hub.
So are a lot of other communities, and like I said, we're all gonna be going for the largest amount of money that we can possibly get. I guess that's why I would like to see, I would have liked to have seen that there are some guidelines that will assure us that Alpine would be getting something depending on, on something, population needs something. I just feel that we're gonna kind of going into something, and we're going all the way to Corpus, all these bigger cities that are gonna have a much bigger need than Alpine is. Are we gonna be caught up in, well, putting it in Alpine is gonna serve 50 people versus putting it in Corpus where it's going to serve the needs of 6,000?
Well, I think possibly I've either phrased it wrong or you misunderstood me. It is that the hub concept is so that every community in that hub has a potential for gain from the grant.
Yes, sir. I
It's
understand.
not, and it's not to where, it's not where, okay, the facility's gonna be built, say it's 19 miles outside of Fort Stockton. But by the way, that's just one of the potential facilities to be built within that hub. This isn't a grant it's not industrial development. Whereas like if you folks, for example, wanted to put some kind of a production facility and you were gonna offset taxes and you were going to contribute money and you were to do all that stuff and it was gonna be for your community. This is not that. This hub concept is that every community inside that hub stands to gain from it. You're not competing dollar for dollar. I mean, and if you wanted to get down to competition dollar for dollar, I told Mayor Eves just kind of casually how important Alpine is to this entire concept. You're sitting in the middle of the emerging US 67 trade corridor. You're also sitting at the junction of two major rail lines that are going to be directly involved in this. So Alpine has a seat at the table. Another example is kind of an internal one to you all. The buses that we're talking about as a concept for Alpine. Those buses would not, the fuel, for the hydrogen fuel that would be brought, wouldn't be brought to town for the buses to be made right here. There'd be a small electrolyzer setup, basically converting water into hydrogen, which goes into a fuel cell to create electricity to run the bus. And that thing would be placed at a strategic location somewhere in town and be extremely safe to all standards and consume a small amount of space. So it's easy to think, because El Paso and San Antonio are involved in this, that everything's going to go there. Historically, frankly, that's what's happened. And this hub concept is contrary to all that. So and frankly, part of the approval process is that underserved communities be served out of this. All we're looking for is a letter of support and an opportunity to continue the conversation about a local and small regional bus service. And we're not asking for, we don't want any money. We're not asking for anything but your support and a possibility to look forward.
Okay, so you're saying some of the benefits that Alpine could have is people riding Amtrak, stop, get on the bus, take a tour down to the park, go up to Fort Davis, maybe the observatory up there. And so that would bring more people in, as well as possible middle income housing and,
Yes, ma'am. There, the reason that the Amtrak stop is so important to this thing is that it would bring folks to the Alpine, Big Bend, Marfa area who don't want to drive. It would be the same people who would hop on a plane, for example, and leave out of Midland and fly to I don't know, someplace for vacation
right,
and not drive. And there's a lot of folks that kind of fit in that category. One of them is very close to me. Yeah, she won't get in a car to go anywhere. She wants to fly there and rent something and, or take public transit. So you have El Paso on one end and you have San Antonio on the other, and the stop is right here in Alpine in the middle, and you're already extremely popular with both of those cities. So there's a lot of growth, there's growth potential for you. And ma'am, I wish I could hand you an earmark, but the money's not even allocated.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that. I just,
Yeah.
Would we have to apply for this money?
On the DOT grant, the DOT side of it, we could offer you all the support in the world, but the signature on the bottom has to come from a municipal or civic entity
So
on the
we,
DOT grant.
so,
that's for the charging stations though, right?
Right, yeah, that's
okay.
on the DOT.
so the
grant.
housing that you've talked about, in this pot of money, are we having to apply as part of that pot of money to get affordable housing here or to get?
No, not on the DOE side. On the DOE grant that's the hub grant. That's the big one. And that grant it's issued to the applicants to the DOE for that grant, which at this point in time is a union of the Port of Corpus Christi and MMEX Resources.
now when you talk about housing, let me go back to that.
Sure.
You're not saying, and maybe you are, but that you actually help in bringing someone to bring housing. You just allot a certain amount of money, if that's what we decide we want to spend it on, to help towards somebody coming in.
To do whatever you want to do with them.
So it's not actually, I just wanted to point that out. It's not actually that money will be bringing someone who is building the housing. It's just for us to use, say, like
To purchase a property.
infrastructure or something like that to help towards housing coming in.
If you chose to do that, if you chose to seek out a developer and offer that developer some kind of subsidy through an industrial development grant, that'd be one thing. If you wanted to take some city property and put streets and sewer in it.
Right, I
that'd
just
be-
didn't want anybody to think that this was gonna be housing and it's gonna solve our problem in one big ball, it's just.
It may be nothing.
Exactly.
Pardon me?
It may also be nothing,
Well,
because there's no criteria. It's, the
If-
committee will get formed and we'll all work.
if collectively, if we don't apply for it, if we don't secure the grant, I promise you it will be. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of money on the table and there's a lot of competition for it. I mean, I hesitate to say this thing on a public forum, but the simple truth is, the Appalachian hub that went straight to Joe Manchin. And the entire state of California will be awarded theirs.
Mayor, are we able to ask the audience, if they have any questions or any input
Sure.
on any of
I
this?
I mean,
And I'm also curious, is this basically a public-private partnership? Which we have no guidelines.
Well, I see us as writing a letter to help them get a grant, but doesn't guarantee us anything. Is that true?
well, that's
Possibly.
not necessarily.
Right.
What,
Well, that's
Possible.
That's just what I hear. I think it's an awful lot for us to absorb in 20 minutes and give you an answer. I think it would take a lot more, none of us have ever heard of it. I haven't. I don't, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I've never heard of any of this. I would like to do a little more research before I tell Megan, sure, let's write a letter and get in on this. I don't understand it enough to give you an answer tonight.
Well, the Department of Energy is trying to give out $7 billion in grants.
I
to
got that
Texas,
part.
And part of it would be used in West Texas in partnership with Corpus Christi. MMEX has a refinery project they've been working on about 3 miles other side of Woodstock.
Got
Big part of it. And so what they're asking for is just support to do their piece of
To
it.
get their money, but it doesn't guarantee us anything.
But it
Well, it doesn't
doesn't
guarantee
give
us.
us anything, but it doesn't cost us.
Doesn't hurt.
well, let me clarify something.
All right.
MMEX doesn't get a dime of this. This is what the hub, it's for the hub.
Okay.
It's not, MMEX is financed by a completely different entity
And they're
whatsoever.
just on the transactions, they're helping to get the transaction.
Is
Is that their part in it?
they put, their part is to put the transaction together to create a hub, which may eventually create tax benefits and some other things for them. Create an end users. And possibly join with a city like Alpine or that might want to do the hydrogen bus thing. But that's a separate entity. That has nothing to do with the hub concept itself. Basically, and we're trying to get you folks to sign on for a bunch of federal money.
Which will help
That-
your company get money in it.
Maybe ultimately, but not initially. We're not, not a dime of that hub money will go into the development of that project.
What is the deadline for the application?
It's the application was submitted April 7th.
Letters of support, what's the deadline?
We have until, let me look. I think submission May 31st.
So that gives us some time, that gives
Yeah.
us some time to research it. So the key point is, it doesn't cost us anything. We're not guaranteed to gain anything, but then again, we may. But if we
Yeah.
don't sign on, then we definitely won't.
Well, you'll have a seat at the table.
Yeah. So that's long story short.
Yeah. And honestly, of all of the communities within that hub, this is the only one that didn't sign. Everyone else is, everyone else is engaged in it. And frankly, Presidio was a hard sell too.
Mayor, I had asked if we could have some of the.
I don't
audience
think
because
so.
We do have some people that come from the city and are probably pretty familiar with what this is going on, but I'm sorry.
Is there anything else,
I
council?
can visit with them if anyone wants to provide additional.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Okay. We're moving on to item number 5, discuss the city of Alpine and Brewster County interlocal agreement, city manager.
So as you recall, we've been kind of discussing this in bits and pieces here and there. Judge Hennington, and I and have in the fire department, we've all been sitting down having discussions on how do we provide, I like to say, opportunity for them. Currently, our fire department accounts are accountable to 2 people or 2 entities. We have some issues with like inventory and knowing what they have and what they need and some communication. I know that we've reached out to the fire department. We've had a couple meetings, had to reschedule meetings. I know Judy as our liaison has been working with the county as well. So the idea was to take both the city and county and remove them from the fire department. Currently, the city does fund a larger portion for the fire department than the county, but the county provides them the building space. And, we have the equipment and they, the county may help with maintaining some of it. The interlocal agreement that was in place between the county and the city has expired. Judge Henningsen did provide formal notice not renewing it, and really wanted to discuss having a nonprofit, a board step in and help guide them, to provide them that leadership and that direct involvement on a regular basis with what do you need, where are you at, what training can we get, what grant opportunities, but to focalize it to build a better community volunteer fire department. Now, remember, Greg has a lot of experience in this because this is his passion when he was down south. So the more we talked about it, honestly, I think it's a great idea because it's not, yes, mother, may I do this with the city? Mother, may I do this with the county? It's an independent organization, a nonprofit board that will allow them to have some of that accountability and control. The structure of the fire department does not change, just really who they report to. The city would provide 50% of the funding and the county would provide 50% of the funding. So it puts a little bit more on the county. And then at the end of the day, there's not the headache. It's not following procurement. It's not following maintenance. It's not following how are we going to do, where are we going to get the funds from? But it also allows this board to go through and be able to go through all of those grants and to have the administration and really know what's going on. So after we sat down and discussed it, had several meetings in regards to, how do we want to do this? Who could help with this? It would be a board comprised of people from the county selection and people from the city selection. And of course, the council would approve, pretty much whoever we thought would be best to serve on this board. Rod was asked to put an interlocal agreement together to combine the county and the city and be able to access that nonprofit board as well, which is what is enclosed. Now, Greg is eager. He has a passion for this and he does not want to let me breathe. So he has moved through this with his commissioners and they're all on board with it. They like the idea of splitting the cost, obviously. And remember, the costs are really dependent on, what the board really thinks they need. But not only that, but the grants that could come through, the fundraising that can come through, the things that neither the county or the city really have the time to manage. It does talk about responsibilities of the city. It also talks about responsibilities of the county. Now, this isn't for approval tonight. And then I made sure that Greg was aware of it. When he sent me the signed copy, I was just like, whoa, wait a minute, I haven't even discussed it. So this is just for discussion tonight. And we've already been throwing around some names, some ideas of people who could sit on the board. I know the mayor and Judy and myself and Greg, and we just randomly started thinking of people who would best serve to represent our community. Off the top of my head, I know Mr. Leffler's here. It was Paul Leffler, Stacy Wood, Albert Lujan from Sonic. It would be a great addition. Stephanie Elmore, Albert Benitez. He's actually I believe a firefighter, certified firefighter from Odessa area, but he's been helping out here with the EMS side of things. Rusty Moore, he's a great asset to our community that we want to tap into more. And then Aaron Rodriguez, he provides kind of a new business approach as well as he has that law enforcement background. So these are just names that we've been throwing around to start, have a board. And then eventually, I would be able to just do this. Here you go. And it's one less thing that the city would have to truly worry about. We wouldn't be invoicing the county wouldn't be invoicing us. It would just be kind of like the recycle center, just a split division of expenditures. And then it would build that fire department. Andrew Pierce, the chief, has done a good job. But I think with the support of a board that can give him that direction and give them the direction, we could have a much larger volunteer fire department. And then the equipment. I know the mayor has asked and I have asked, and we kind of, where are we at with the inventory, what needs to be fixed, and what needs to be repaired. You would have a full understanding, and not the, well, we couldn't really help with that fire, we had to call another agency because our pumper truck is broken. There would be someone on top of that. So with
As
all
well-
that being said,
The retirement too, correct?
yes, so they would take over everything, workman's comp,
We
retirement,
would do it.
maintenance. Anything and everything would be done by a third party or the board.
I have a couple of questions. On the board, you said it wouldn't have operational responsibilities, but if needed, do they have the ability to get involved in operational side of things?
I definitely think that's a good question to go back to Greg. I don't see why that wouldn't be an issue if they see it's not working.
Right.
That they
I
would
don't
be able to
mean
step in and,
micromanaging or anything,
Correct.
but I think someone needs to be able to step in if they see a problem or.
so I believe, and this is how Greg and I, we actually talked yesterday morning, because when like I said, I was a little like, oh my God, what are you doing? When we talked yesterday morning, his thought and my thought was the first couple years, or even just the first year, it is gonna be a very active board. It's not just once a month, once a quarter meeting. It's gonna be, feet on the ground at the fire station. Where are we at? What apparatuses do we have? Going through and knowing what is the training? What actual training certifications have been provided for these volunteers? Because I think that's all of our fear. So right now, the city, and going back to the finance report, we had a 49% increase in workman's comp for the fire department. That has to be included, and it's a huge expense. We cover that. And then in my mind, it's like, okay, if we're providing workman's comp coverage at the same time, what training are we providing to make sure that they are responding correctly? They're not just running into a building, a burning building. And that the board would be able to control. Because right now they're really not accountable to anyone.
Right. And then my other question was this, section 2 calls for the transfer of all equipment to Brewster County. Should this disband at any time? Is there anything that addresses what will be done with it? Will the county and the city split the equipment? Does it go back where it came from, or what happens?
So considering we don't really know what we have, that is a very good question. The idea is that the city will give it all to the county, let them just manage all of it. So if the board disperses, the county would just continue with it. And that's been the biggest problem since I've been with the city is I can't tell you what they have. Our assets are not up to date. So the county in 2018 relinquished all of their assets to the city. So we got all of their vehicles. Well, we never got all the titles. We never got all in. It was a back and forth, and it kind of got pushed to the back burner with, well, as long as someone has it insured. And the board would continue that.
So if it disbands, and hopefully it did, but if it did, and everything went to the county, does the city not have a legal obligation to provide that service to the city?
No.
No? Okay, that's all I need to know.
And Rod can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe.
Well, the heck, if the county ended up taking over this operation, they would end up taking over the firefighting obligations of the city. If that was the end result. I think one thing to think about is that this is sort of a baby step, see how it works for the city and county working together, but if it does, it's the first step in trying to have a more regional approach to fire and EMS.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get caught.
Actually, I think you are right, Chris, because our recent annexation paperwork does say that we will provide fire service. Doesn't necessarily mean that we can't.
Ourselves.
Yeah, we don't have to do it ourselves. We could contract like we do with EMS. And that would be working back with the county. But I can take it back to the drawing board. The county has approved it. I think it really is a good idea and something that we should try. The idea really is to build this regional kind of, this is how I worded it to Greg. I love the idea because why are we competing for the same resources?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea too, but, and the guys are doing a wonderful job. But there is a lot of resources out there and a lot of individuals in the community that can assist them in making it a little bit better than this, and that can guide them because they are young and I think could use the guidance of,
Councilor Rodriguez, I think Megan and I could probably get an MOU going with Greg to address the issue you raised about. But
no, I mean, as long as we're not, I just didn't want the city to be at the end of it, oh, shoot, now we have to provide the service and we don't have any. But if it is if legally it doesn't have to be from the city,
it doesn't,
that was just my only
as
concern.
long as the city makes sure it's provided service.
Can you go over the list of names one more time?
So, and these are, like I said, all tentative. Paul Leffler, and if you don't know his background, he does have a background in firefighting.
And he's
so
here.
I can
It was
attest
kind of
to
an
that.
obvious, like, hey,
And a lot of knowledge that's what I was talking about, that he can pass on to this younger generation that they're doing wonderful, but could stand to get the input from
it
somebody
is,
else.
you want that knowledge passed down.
And guidance.
Stacy Wood works with Trans Pecos Banks. So she brings in a good financial background. Albert Lujan is a community member. He does a lot with our community. Yes, he was a former fireman as well. He served for several years. Great asset to the possible committee. Stephanie Elmore, of course, because she is our EMC. Albert Benitez, because he does bring a young certified firefighter experience into our community. He's engaged with Alpine, not just with EMS, but our local residents. Like I said, Rusty Moore, great businessman, and he'd hopefully bring in a whole upgrade on communication.
How big of a board are you looking at? Are you
Seven.
looking 7?
And then Aaron Rodriguez. I threw Aaron's name out, and I know the judge jumped on it to get his input. I look at it as Aaron has been in and out of our community. So he did work for the city of Alpine. He's contracted with the county. He started his own computer company. But he's back and forth, and it's one of those, let's keep him here because he has an asset, not only with his business, but with his background. So he knows when you call 911 and that, side of it. So I thought it was important. He's also a younger gentleman and could provide a good insight. So he has been approached. As far as who represents who, there is no, we just threw them all there.
Yeah.
But we have kind of touched base with them because we didn't want to go and be like, hey, we're gonna put this committee together, and then 7 months later be like, oh, well, we still don't know who we want on it. Like I said, Greg is very passionate, very like, he just wants to get it done, which is great. But I had to tell him, hey, I really need to talk to council.
The county approved it today.
No,
Last
they
week.
approved it last week.
Last Tuesday.
Yeah, when he sent it to me, he got the slightly panicked phone call like, I need to discuss this with the council. We can't just approve it. I'd like to give him a little information discussion. That way, if there's any concerns or questions, then we can approve it or not approve it the next meeting, but he wants it done. So like I said, just information discussion, definitely come back with any ideas.
You'll get it on there the 9th for us to
It's
vote
on
on
for
it.
the 9th to approve.
Any other questions, comments? All right, moving on to discussion item number 6. Updating and or creating a city ordinance regarding street use. City manager.
So, and I know Mr. Rutledge, we kind of put him on hold and he's not here tonight. I am concerned with how we move forward with how we handle city-owned property, right of ways, and the decision on whether to sell, to vacate it, to close it, to abandon it. And so I know at the last meeting, we had the action item and then we discussed it more. And one of the feedback was, well, that's a good question. What do we do? So for the past week or so, I've been looking, there are state statutes that'll tell us what we can and can't do with the property. Enclosed in the packet was kind of what we have currently. So what we have submitted currently really only addresses the sale or lease. And so because that's kind of what I honestly thought at one point, that's what we do. We just sell it all. But then as I got into it with Mr. Rutledge and had the discussion, and of course with Mr. Cotton, we have abandoned property for other people. And so what determines if we abandon it over if we sell it, and what guidelines do we have in place? And then I went down the rabbit hole of every city that has ordinances. you only got a little bit of it. But every city has a really good concept of a checklist. If you're gonna abandon it, it has to meet these criteria. And then what does that individual or city have to do? I know Judy and I spoke briefly and she said, you know, you've got the community center and it has an alley, by the way, that runs through the property, just like
Building,
through the
not just the
building.
property it goes through.
And so the city never replatted or officially did anything with it. So we have these, when you look at our maps and plats, we have these alleys, we have these little pieces of property that you're sitting there going, well, did it get abandoned? Another example is West Texas National Bank in Morrison True Value. That was an alley, but when you look at the plat, it shows an alley, but obviously you're not gonna drive through the building.
On Avenue G by where you live, there's homes that are built on highways. You know, we have a lot of that.
And so I think to move forward, we have to honestly have the conversation of, we need an ordinance that provides a criteria. So that it doesn't matter who's sitting on council, who's sitting a city manager, or even a resident who wants to purchase, sell, or whatever. They have like, oh, I don't qualify for this, so I'm gonna have to do this. In the packet, of course, was our current process. And then I provided, and this was just an interesting little from the city of McKinney. Their packet was just like, I gave up on like the first page. So this was like page 11. But just like
Mine
frequently
turned
asked
sideways,
questions.
so hold on.
Frequently asked questions, like this is what they give to those who are interested in the property. You know, I know some of the items that Rod had brought up as far as just the basic street system. How does it affect the road? How does it affect the right of way? The movement of traffic, are we closing all of it? Are we closing part of it? So they actually have to kind of go through and have an understanding if they can even answer these questions. You know, it talks about utility, it talks about drainage, which Mr. Pond brought up, access, relationship to adjacent owners. State statute does indicate that if a city was abandoning a property, it becomes available to those on either side. So for example, the Skelton property, or that road, Walker Street, we abandoned half of it basically, while the other half is available for that other property owner. So one part has been developed as part of a private business and the other is just, you know, part of a road. Going right down further, you have the food pantry. Well, the city didn't abandon that, but we went in and paved it so that they could use it as part of their drive-through and parking for their customers. And so it's really understanding, yes, the city should always sell something. I mean, that is probably the best practice. But I think if we put in a policy and an ordinance together that says, this is what your criteria is, then we're not having this discussion every time. Because I know that, you know, Gio here had said, are you setting precedents? Well, in my mind, it's like, well, we kind of have already. Because we've done it one way with the Skeletons, we've done it another way with the Fielders, and I know he's sitting right there. And then we have another.
We're
one
not
coming
giving
up.
you your money back. Don't even get started.
And so then we have another one coming up and I know, I mean, Chris, you'd mentioned it and Judy you as well. We're gonna have more of these because we have these little pockets. We have these little pieces of abandoned roads. I'm right now I want to purchase one. But if I know that it meets the criteria to abandon and I'm gonna build on it and you're gonna get my property tax.
And what's sad is that we're making the people that are actually honest and coming up and doing it the right way pay this money to either, you know, or go to the trouble of getting it surveyed and all this when houses are just being built wherever they want. So I do agree with what you said, get some kind of checklist going and.
I followed up on what Megan had done and gave you all a memo. And home rule cities like Alpine can sell property to adjacent property owners without putting it out for bid. In general, the practice of abandoning streets, like Megan mentioned, if you abandon it and it's a city easement, then it goes to the adjacent property owners. But then you have the issue of what if you're only abandoning half of it? Well, you're really not abandoning the street. And so the idea would be that we would come up with an ordinance that would sort of set forth the criteria so that it's really going to be better going forward. I think if we make people buy it. It's not gonna cost a lot of money, but at least we're not giving away city property. If somebody wants to buy a piece of Brown Street, that's been under a fence for a while, at least we're not giving it away, but that'll be a decision for the council to make. But whatever y'all decide to do, we can come up with a process based on some best practices from other cities and the state law that I'm giving y'all to make it easier for people going forward, because everybody's gonna be treated the same.
Rod, where are we on taking care of or cleaning up some of the stuff that's already out there?
As far as the request for abandonment.
No, like homes being built and the highways and roads just
People are
being,
not supposed to build, people are supposed to get a building permit, and the building permit requires them to build on their own property, not on the highway.
but there's a lot that haven't. So where are we legally and how do we clean that up? Again, is what I'm asking.
Well, if somebody's built on our property, we have the right to tell them to change it. So if somebody's built across on the street or an alley, we can tell them to move it.
So will
but
that
it's-
be
But
something?
once again, it's one of those things, a lot of those properties have been like that for 50 years.
So is that something we put in
But
this?
What I'm talking about on this is just for the sale of surplus or abandoned city. The city property, rights of way, streets, et cetera, that we may want to give up, that we haven't been using. And like Megan said, you would want to make sure you have a checklist to make sure that the city doesn't need it for utility easements, the city doesn't need it for a drainage easement, the city doesn't need it to build a street later, even if the street's not built now. You'd have to check off all those boxes before you start getting to the final issue of do we give it to them or sell it to them.
Yeah, we need this.
And I
We
think
need
there-
it to be uniform so that we're not selling it to one person and giving it to another.
Right.
So that everybody's treated the same.
Well, I think the answer to your question, Chris, and I'm gonna mention McCaney because, I mean, that was the best rabbit hole. They actually so they have a right of way ordinance. And it addresses these type of questions with the sale, abandon, vacate, closure, and it explains what each one is. But then they have construction in a right of way. They have, all of these other chapters that are part of it. I think that would answer your question as far as, okay, well, if they start construction in our right of way, do they have a permit? Do they have permission? How does it affect the city? That would give you the teeth to be able to do something. As far as things that have already been done, what I've discussed with Andrew Devaney is when someone comes in and wants to alter, that's when we address it. So I know we have a couple issues right now, especially like with mobile homes, and where you have too many mobile homes on a lot size, where you're supposed to have one, they have three. So when they move out that one mobile home and they make it two, they're not allowed to bring that third one back in. Because the ordinance specifically says you can only have one structure per X amount of, foot. And so that's how we're cleaning up some of those issues. It is time consuming because, most people aren't trying to pull out their mobile home and put a new one in, but we are catching them. And like you said, Mr. Rutledge did it the right way, and unfortunately, he got caught with, okay, it's not really your property. The other part of the handout, which I thought was a really good presentation, this was actually presented by another legal company. And what I liked about it is I would like to put this on our website, because it does provide you those, what can a home rule city do? So we are home rule, but it also did explain the general rule as well. But it also provided you the state statutes, it provided you like the use of street sidewalks, public conveniences, easements. It provided you a little bit of breakdown for everything. It went into the transportation code, which one applies to home rule. It went into if you're gonna sell it, that's a state law as well, section 252. If it's sold, recording it, making sure it gets platted, and those kind of procedures. So I thought this kind of did what I do is it's like, oh, that's a question I have. Oh, look, they answered it right here. So I just thought it was an interesting article, presentation. It's a little old, it's from 2018. But I noticed going through a lot of the cities, and I can send you guys all of those ordinances as samples. There was a big push in 18. Because a lot of them, when you look at the last time they were updated, you're looking at 2018. Some of them are from the 70s. A lot of ours are from the 70s. But I do want to move forward with an ordinance. I only think it's appropriate so that we can have that checklist. Because we're gonna have this come up more.
My handout that I gave y'all, followed up on the good work Megan did, has some Q&As from T and L.
So this is just step one. This is just the information. And then we'll start working on an ordinance, and then we'll have to update our.
We're not gonna make the ordinance so complicated, nobody can understand it, right?
No,
Thank you.
Judy, the Texas,
If I can't understand it, nobody else.
Texas City has a one-page policy
Well, say-
procedure.
It's gotta be, and it's for us. If you meet 1, 2, 3, 4, you're in. You meet 1 and 2, not sorry, go figure out how to do 3 and 4. That's what I'd like to see. And just streamline it. We don't have to have something we don't have to have 37 pages.
so you don't want, if you have 0.5 square footage.
No,
on the left side,
no. Give them rulers and stuff, no. Just,
No, it would just be simple, but
Very
it would
simple.
also help anyone, and then I'm pretty sure.
well,
there
it'll
are
help them
residents out
too,
there, Yeah,
yeah.
but just, like I said, just some information, because I know we brought it up. And I want it to be consistent.
Well, I
And then
think
that
we
needs
all
to be-
agree.
it needs
to be
Yes.
fair.
Yeah,
it does.
So what do you think? Well, no, this is what we're doing.
Okay, anything else?
I add something. Because there's not a utility director here to say it.
So,
You don't know where the damn utilities are half the time, so be careful when you start abandoning and selling property. Because you may have a 30-inch water line under somebody's home before you know it.
That's true.
that has happened. But there is, like I said, that questionnaire does address.
Yes, utilities. I remember seeing that, yeah. Okay, so number 9, action items. The first one is city manager.
Approved resolution 2023-04-21, a resolution initiating annexation proceedings and setting dates, times, and places for public hearings on the annexation of the proposed Skyway Gardens development legally described as 5.0 acres out of section 102, block 9, Brewster County, Texas, being a portion of that certain 10-acre tract described in volume 314, page 453, official public record of Brewster County, Texas. A little background. So you guys had approved a prior resolution. Unfortunately, that resolution has specific dates set to it, and we didn't meet those dates. So in order to be clear and transparent, we're re-presenting a new resolution with the new dates. What's outlined in the resolution is your municipal service agreement and development agreement. And that's what we were missing the last time. So we didn't have the first reading of the ordinance. So like I said, we're kind of starting from square one again, new resolution, new dates. Rod did provide us with that municipal service agreement, and it is currently in the hands of Skyway Gardens, 2 representatives to evaluate, and I believe they've asked some additional questions as well.
Yeah, they called me before the council meeting to make sure y'all understand that the stuff we've submitted is just the beginning point. It's not nothing for approval on the attachments that we gave y'all. It's just to show that we're starting the process of coming up with final plans for everything.
And before you guys do anything, you really need a motion. I was just giving you background.
All right, I need a motion.
Do we have enough voting members to make a
Yeah,
motion?
you do.
With Chris abstaining, we still have enough.
Yeah, because you'll have a majority sitting, it's so that you can actually vote with just 2 people.
Okay.
Chris would have to-
Because this one will be,
I so move.
okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, passes.
The quorum requirement.
Ms. Stokes and Sandate.
With a present.
And do you just want to call abstention?
Yes, abstentions. Raise your right hand. Okay, with Councilmember Rodriguez abstaining. Thank you. All right, action item number 2, city manager.
Approved special use permit 2023-04-01, a special use permit for the purpose of allowing the applicant alcove and protected areas of Start Local LLC to obtain a mixed beverage license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to establish a bar at the subject property. The property in question is located at 211 East Holland Avenue. The property ID of the subject property is 11800. The property owner, the record property owner is ALP 207 211 East Holland, a protected series of BG Real Property Holdings. A little background on this. This is one of the properties that is owned by Mr. Garcia. This would be where the Saddle Club is. It did have a mixed beverage license before that. Because of the time frame that we are allowed to be able to issue these type of items, they automatically come straight before council. I just wanted to bring that up. He is requesting that permit. He will go through all the TABC guidelines, but he does need the city.
Could we not combine 2 and 3 since it's the same?
They're different permit types. One's a
Okay.
mixed beverage and one's
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Good luck. We're all excited.
All right, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, good. Passes unanimously. Okay, action item number 3, city manager.
Approved special use permit 2023-04-02. A special use permit for the purpose of allowing the applicant Brews and Hughes, a protected series of Start Local LLC, to obtain a beer and wine license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to establish an art gallery where beer and wine may be sold. The property in question is located at 209 East Holland Avenue. The property ID of the subject property is 11802. The record property owner is ALP 207 211 East Holland, a protected series of BG Real Property Holdings. So this is the other part, the Granada side. This would be the beer and wine permit.
Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I need a second.
Second.
Discussion.
I'd just like to thank you. You have made a huge impact on the city since you've come here and opened your businesses. Even without doing this and making the income that you're going to be getting now, you have opened your doors and have provided so many services that are badly needed in Alpine. We do thank you.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right, now we're at city council member comments. Councilmember Stokes.
I'd just like to thank all our city employees. You know, we heard Adelina's name 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, 50 times tonight. Jessica Boers, she works her butt off. I know she does. Abel, even though we harass Abel, sometimes he actually works out there. And Jennifer at Animal Services, you know, I sit in those meetings with her and she just does so much out there that we don't see. Nobody's ever gonna see it unless you're sitting at that animal shelter, which I don't want to go do. It's too sad. And everybody come to Pueblo Nueva Park, you know, I think that's gonna be a good, it's needed. You know, my kids all had practice over there and it was a big dirt lot. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez. Good. Councilmember Sedano. Okay, and I just want to say thank you, Megan, for including the update of the budget and continue that monthly, please. Also Patsy for her presentation and Chris for his dedication and his hard work and for him speaking on the museum's project. And Benjamin, thank you for all you do for the community, and Andrea and Mr. Fielder, thank you for everything that you do. Ms. Cantrell, congratulations, and thank you for your service on our Parks Board. She is now the new chairperson, if you're not aware.
He does live in my ward, by the way.
Yeah, and Daryl and Mr. Stevens, and thank you all for everything that you do for Alpine, on the benefit of Alpine.
Make one more comment.
Sure.
It's a legal question, actually, but are commercial businesses exempted from the public nuisance ordinances?
I don't think so.
Well, then you might be able to use the nuisance ordinances to have something done about those tires.
We also have some environmental trash type ordinances, so We can
May
look
not,
at
may
that.
not need to create new things because you just use it, kind of like gun control laws. We don't use the ones we have. We don't need a bunch more that we're also not going to use.
It's true. Thanks, Guy. Yeah. I'll make a mental note of that.
Okay, so this brings us to item number 11, executive session pursuant to chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. The city council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting for any posted agenda item or to receive advice from attorney as permitted by law. Tonight, the city council will recess into executive session pursuant to section 551.074 personnel matters and also 551.071 consult with an attorney. All right, may I get a motion, please, to recess into executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, so we're gonna convene into executive session at 7:51 PM. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
can just get it off my, oh, I talked about that.
We should be good.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, may I please have a motion to reconvene into open session?
I'll make a motion to read.
I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, approved unanimously. So we're reconvening into open session at 8:30 PM. So this brings us to item number 12, action after executive session. I need someone to make a motion to set the following expectations for the city secretary, chief governance officer. We expect cross-training, complete the next phase of certification, introductory course for residents and or elected officials such as refresher courses. Go to TML in October. Delegate job duties. I need somebody to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it passes unanimously. All right, I need a motion to add the additional title to the city manager as chief executive officer. I need a motion.
So we're doing city manager slash.
Yes, city manager slash
CEO.
chief executive officer, yes. I need a motion.
I'll
Thank
make
you.
that motion.
I need a second.
I second.
Any discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, that passes 2-1. All opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, one opposed. All right, may I have a motion and a second with no vote to adjourn the meeting?
So I make that motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we are adjourned.
All before 9.
Yes,
It's still daylight.
it is. Next time.